This is the early morning of the 31st. I want to start off by wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Remember what I said, if you've got kids and they go out shaloting, collect everything that they've gathered, tell them not to eat anything en route or on their way home, and pitch it all. And hope you bought them new stuff to give them from the grocery store. I don't expect a whole lot of activity. Last year I only had 4 children come, which really surprised me, and I spent, $40, $50, and I gave it to a neighbor. Not the $50 with all the candy. So don't let them eat what they pick up, because there's a lot of sick people out there. Came across this clip put up by Garybpilot. Air India under fire. Crew and families demand the truth. Now, when you listen to what's said in this clip, and it plays for just about 20 minutes, I had told you it was either a situation where water from the lavatory sprayed onto the electronic equipment bay, or it had a software malfunction. It had nothing to do with the pilots. So let's listen to what Gary has to say. Again, it plays for about 20 minutes.
India Flight 171. There's so much information that is still coming together months later after that tragic accident that I felt like it was actually time to do an update and see what everybody else thinks about some of this new information. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I extensively covered Air India Flight 171, and I took us down some rabbit holes. I wanted to explore every theory. I wanted to know possibilities and really try and search for the truth of what could have caused such a bizarre accident. So 4 months later, I think it is officially time for an update. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick recap of some of the information that I had covered and learned in prior videos. And then we're going to discuss all these new current updates, because some of these updates, one of them is crazy enough, but all of these that come together, in my opinion, start to paint a picture. And watching this with fresh eyes again, months later, I got to say, something doesn't sit right with the official narrative. I do not believe that this pilot intentionally cut these fuel switches. That is just my opinion. I could be wrong, but we're going to go through that an MIT professor predicted that this was going to happen. We're going to talk about the captain's father and the other pilots federation that filed in the Supreme Court of India for an independent investigation. What do you think that tells you? Okay. The Air India pilots are also calling for a 7-8 safety inspections and calling to ground the airplanes. You see the picture we're starting to paint here? How about a couple weeks ago, an Air India 787 rat deployed out of the blue and landed in Birmingham with its rat deployed, and nobody knows why? How about a new airworthiness directive that I had missed before that clearly shows safety concerns in the 787, and then you combine that with Air India's maintenance? What do you think could possibly be going on? And could this be another key to a potential link of what caused that? So then I spoke to an Air India pilot that had been there for over 20 years, that knew the captain personally. I'll tell you what the consensus is, what they're saying. Spoiler alert, it is not good. They do not trust the official narrative. They brought some really good insight that I'm going to share with you guys. So let's roll the intro and get right into this video.
Ladies. They're trying to hang it on the pilot for obvious reasons, because this would cripple Boeing, and it'll probably have a real strong negative impact on Air India. And I've posted countless videos on this, and I've always been consistent. It had nothing to do with the pilot. It had to do with the aircraft, either the software upgrade for the auto throttles that they gave it, or the plumbing issues. And you'd think that Boeing would know that you don't want to route water lines over electronic equipment bay. Water and electricity do not get along well together. Let's go back.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take off with Garybpilot. Let's go!
Real quick, a couple updates on this channel. I appreciate you guys watching. I am almost to 100,000 subscribers. Not that anyone's counting. Secondly, we do have a sponsor of today's video. It's ZocDoc. Listen, this is a free service you can use for patients. And if you want to...
Okay, I'm not interested in you pitching your... Yeah. I don't have a sponsor. I don't have much of anything. I don't have a whole lot of subscribers. I would have if I wasn't taken off of BoobTube initially. So he's pitching a sponsor now.
A software glitch. It's not just me talking about this. There's a lot of people out there that are saying the 787 is so complicated, so reliant on computers, that this could have been possibility, that it's something with the software that in something so complex that could have caused both engines to shut down.
And what changed between this 787-8 and the other ones over the last 13 years? Well, what changed is Boeing made a software, a couple of upgrades. They upgraded the radios so they wouldn't switch from UHF to VHF, and Qantas, who has a large number of these planes, said that software didn't work. I don't think it worked on the autothrottles either. Let's go back.
And we review some of that. I'm not saying all of that is what happened, but it's worth exploring. And let me set the premise here. Let's hypothetically say Air India maintenance was responsible for the 787 crash, just hypothetically. Would Air India have an incentive to shift the blame to the pilots or away from them for that matter? I think the answer is obviously yes. It would benefit them. So there's an old saying that says, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome, right? So if that's the case, we have to do our due diligence. It's not everybody, but somebody needs to ask questions and go and overturn all these stones and figure out, hey, are we actually getting the truth? Now let's skip to Boeing. Hypothetically, let's say it was an error from Boeing that caused the Air India 171 to go down.
Routing water lines over Electronic Bay is completely insane. I mean, it's like storing gunpowder in a furnace room. You know, you just don't mix the two together.
Would it benefit Boeing to shift blame to the pilots or away
Absolutely.
from them again? I think the answer is obviously yes. That preliminary report was very good for Air India, was very good for Boeing. So if you set that premise, evil corporations exist. People do bad things all the time. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I think it's important for us to go, you know what? We can't just trust everybody and what they say. Let's do our own research. Let's look at things. And the way I see it, I played hide and seek with my son the other night. I'm looking around the house. If I check the closet, I don't know anything if he's there or not. You're starting to search. And then we find things. If we find something, we go, hey, is something there? And then we can start to rule it out. If we go, yeah, that doesn't even make sense. We can completely rule that out. So again, there's a difference between speculating and there's a difference between investigating and looking at things and looking at certain possibilities, especially with this nonsense prelim report and the information that we got that was so withheld and weird. But before we do that, let's hear from our sponsor and we're going to get right into it.
Forget your sponsor. I'm not interested in your sponsor. You know, for you folks that are on YouTube, again, I've posted countless videos on this. And if you're interested in seeing some of those, you can go to Rumble under Cudaman. That's capital CUDAMAN 415708. Or you can ask me to upload some of them, and I will.
Work appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers. With ZocDoc, you can filter for doctors by insurance, location, specialty.
He's still pitching his other... Hey, listen, I can't knock him. He's got a sponsor. It's more than I have.
They really, in my opinion, we didn't get a fair answer of what caused two engines to completely shut down. And when you read the article and you talk about it, it just shut down. The pilots couldn't even get the engines back on. They had to get towed into the gate. So if you're going to set the premise that an ANA 787 engines can shut off unexpectedly on touchdown, are we seriously going to sit here and guess that that couldn't happen in a 787 on a takeoff? Especially when you combine that with India's poor maintenance record. I mean, that's just not me talking. That's an actual fact. India has a bad reputation for skipping maintenance and skipping steps and violating multiple procedures. So
they don't have enough of their own mechanics. They also farm out a lot of their work that's done to these aircraft because they don't have enough mechanics.
You know, as we move away from that and we keep that in mind, let's just quickly talk about the preliminary report. The thing is the preliminary report leaves out so many things. Remember, you can think about if you were telling a story and you can lie by omission in an indirect way. And the thing is, we didn't get timestamps on their conversation. We didn't even get who said what to who. it feels like it was written by somebody trying to CYA, cover your ass, like they're trying to cover it. Now, if we had more information and we had more transparency, this wouldn't be something that we would really need to even cover. So that's the quick recap. That's some of the things that we had talked about. So here's the updates we're going to talk about. I already talked about in the beginning. And this is some of the things that we're going to discuss with this new information. And let's talk about it. Okay, first things first, you guys got to check out this channel. I only recently discovered this. It's called Airline.
There he goes again. He's pitching some other crap.
Quite a bit.
Boy, he's got airline news and he's got a lot going on. I think he's going to hurt himself with all these interruptions in his story. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a little private pilot. He's a transport pilot. He knows a whole lot more than I do. But I called it day one. Software or a plumbing issue. Got nothing to do with the pilots.
Pertaining to the thrust control malfunction protection in the process. And if I won't cover this all because I'll let you go read the report. Basically, he seemed to say in 2016 and in 2018 that this was going to happen, that there's going to be a dual engine shutdown. It's too reliant on computers. We're thinking about that. And, and when you really think about it, it's true. When I talk to Stig Aviation, he tells me he can't change a light ballast in a 787 without updating the software. And you think about the absurdity of relying so much on computers. We can't rule this out yet. And especially with this new AD, I think it's a lot more pertinent and relevant, which we're going to talk. But look what he says in here. He says that Professor Thomas says that TCM, the thrust control malfunction on other aircraft, what's listed there? The 787. STPA is not used. And you read through this report, and the fact that it's talked about, I think this is interesting, even though this came out a long time ago. Let's talk about the Supreme Court request. I think this should speak volume. Now, let's analyze everything and be fair. The father, let's say this captain did intentionally cut the fuel switches, and for whatever reason he did it. And the father just can't accept that fact. Okay, that's a good point. He may actually, say you're trying to blame my son when it's not fair. So that's like, maybe he's too close, too emotional, and to see the fact. That's a possibility. But on the other hand, that the fact that the Federation, the Pilot Federation, the other pilots, and the father are calling for an independent investigation. I mean, look at some of these things they're saying. They're saying that the report is flawed and biased, and basically saying they're investigating themselves. I've seen plenty of power.
It just popped up.
Okay. He's saying that. When's the last time you've seen a family member claim, oh, this is to demand that we need an independent investigation, that it's being a cover up. Okay, I would say some of the MAX crashes, I think that happened, but before that, the only one that comes to mind is TW800, when a 747 just exploded off Long Island, apparently with vapor lock or something about fumes in the center tank or something. Most likely, I think all the family thinks that there was a missile taken off, especially when I guess all these military boats and they were doing drills and scattered. But either way,
I'm going to do this clip in two parts because I don't want to spend 25 minutes and then have it crash the way it seems to be crashing. So I'll do this in two parts. But Gary just mentioned that Flight 800 in New York. What ended up happening with that on that 747 is the aircraft was idling for a long period of time before it took off. And the air conditioning units sit right on top of the center gas tank. And all that heat vaporized some of the fuel inside that tank. And there was a short circuit that created a spark inside the tank, which blew it up. Nothing to do with a missile. That's what they finally found when they reconstructed. I think that was one of the most expensive reconstructions that they've ever had to conduct. But that's what happened. So this will be the end of part one. Air India under fire. And stand by for part 2. And thanks for listening.